This man and his team of misfits changed social media marketing forever, and they did it by roasting customers. Michael Corcoran is the man behind Ryanair's social media success. His team's mission was simple: become the most talked about brand on social. But how would someone even do this?
Well, this is going viral at Ryanair.
Ryanair.
What's going right for Ryanair?
Michael first looked at why people complained about Ryanair, and he had a hilarious realization. Most customers who complained wanted first-class service for the price of an Egg McMuffin. So Michael and his team hit back at these snowflakes by cancelling those who tried to cancel Ryanair. And they did this with hilarious meme-style content. Initially, people thought Ryanair had hired a 12-year-old to shitpost, but there was method to this madness. The team's strategy was to be entertaining while subliminally educating people on how not to be so precious, as all these first-world annoyances were actually necessary to keep the price of tickets low. People flocked to Ryanair's channels to see what the newly labelled bastard brand were going to say next. The entire world, including Jimmy Fallon, was now watching. 2.3 billion social impressions later, Michael and his team quit. But that's a different story. Michael now runs his own social media business called
Nice.
And he wants to push the next wave of social, so sit tight and enjoy the flight.
Thank you for flying Ryanair.
He sounds fucking awesome. Who is that guy? Look, in true Irish fashion, I tried to humble myself straight away. I could not have done any of that work without the amazing team of people that worked with me, that we assembled, that believed and bought into the piece of strategy that we developed. I'll even take myself down another level. I am not a Forbes 30 under 30. I have not been named on some PR influencer list to pitch new business to all these brands with lots of budget. I've let my work do the talking most of the time, and I think I'm okay at it. So why the fuck am I here today, aside from trying to show off the work that we did? I want everybody in this room and everything that's going on today to step back and think. Because the reality is, if you stop posting information or content on the internet, or as brands for that matter, nobody gives a fuck. At the end of the day, we're not saving lives, we are brands. And we do advertising and creative things to become memorable, as James said, and hopefully at one point, they buy shit from us. But when it comes to social media, my landscape, I wouldn't call myself the bigger, rounder marketeer. I think social media needs a bit of a factory reset. So the first question I ask, what is social media? Who the fuck knows? But I know we're all trying to do a good job and trying to solve it. It's very difficult. It's unlike TV and some other channels where it's taken them 60, 70 years to figure out how to do a 30-second spot really, really well. Every time you think you've cracked social media, they throw in a new format, a new algorithm, or a new platform altogether. It is so hard to stay up with these platforms and do the right thing all the time. The next thing I ask is, says who? Social media is not black and white, okay? If anybody says it's black and white, they're talking what? They're talking bullshit. What are they talking? That's too quiet. I thought you were a mad bastards. What are they talking? That's better. We've had a long day of an event. We'll get some alcohol into you and we'll have some fun later on, okay? Good. Okay, so the one thing I'm not going to do today, I could spend all day showing you funny content about Ryanair. Some of you may be aware, some of you haven't even seen any of it, and that's okay. My ego is safe. But what I am going to do is talk about what I think has gone wrong in social media marketing. I'm going to give you some examples of what I mean by being on social media without being on social media. I'm going to talk you through Ryanair's strategy, or my best attempt to. And then once that's all done, I'm going to try and see, well, how the fuck can we do it next? Because it's changed again. So, what went wrong? Everybody in this room is to blame for the shit show that's on social media. The 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The social media managers sitting at Christmas Day trying to have their lunch, and they're posting that stupid happy Christmas post because they can't schedule it. What's gone wrong? The platforms are to blame for half of this. Why? Because they tell you to make lots of content. Why do they want you to make lots of content? So people stay on the platform so they can put ads in between the feed so they can make what? Money. Agencies. If you're in the room, strap up, you're to blame too. Because every social media or content agency that goes out there to tell you brands, the only way to win on social is to make lots of content. Why is that? So they can make what? Money! Because that's how they run their business. We have been conditioned to do this, but there are better ways to do it if we stop and we think. You're going to ask me then, well, Michael, how do I do it for my brand? It depends. But right now, social lives off tactics. What do we mean by that? We talk about formats, we talk about content styles, we talk about all this information of how we execute the work. We need more strategy. And strategy is not a list of tactics. Strategy is also about sacrifice, because these are fragmented and overwhelming platforms with very diluted and small teams that are trying to do a lot and trying to do everything. And it's diluting efforts, which means you're not driving impact. So what is strategy to me? Strategy to me, and I'm not the best strategist in the world, is about bridging the gap of what we aspire to be and what we're doing about it. And what are the guiding principles that get us from where we are now to where we want to get to next? And they're not content pillars. So I'm going to take you through some examples of what I mean about being on social media without being on social media. And I'm going to start with the brand Nike. So Nike has 39 million followers on Facebook. It's not bad. But can you tell me the last time Nike actively published an organic piece of content on their Facebook account? No guesses. May 2024, they published, I think, 40 times during the Olympics. But prior to that, they did not post organically once since January 2018. Now, you think of a brand Nike, incredible storytellers. They understand how to navigate narrative. That they made a decision not to publish to an audience of 39 million followers on Facebook. Why is that? The same time they weren't publishing, they were running 1,900 paid live ad campaigns through the Meta platforms, serving direct response ads and e-com ads to people on these platforms. So my assumption here is they might be confident and understand that all the other touch points of brand building that they were doing was doing enough job for awareness. But the problem might have been, because e-coms was so aggressive on these platforms and there was so many competitors coming, they decided to shift their budget into direct response and try and convert people at the last mile. And the same went for their football, basketball, which is more millions and millions of followers. If you're not familiar with the ad transparency library, this is essentially on the left-hand side of a brand account. You scroll down and you look for the word transparency. You can go in and look at the paid live ads every other brand with a business profile is running on Facebook to see what their messaging is, what their offers is, and what they're running. It's not bad. Next is Lush. Lush a few years ago said they were boycotting social media. But did they? Lush are very good at PR and very good at spin. They do have really good values as a brand, but it never gets in the way of a good PR story either. So what did? They grabbed these headlines all over the world. Lush quits Facebook and Instagram over some of the data protection issues that were going on and the safety of the platforms. They stopped posting organically and running content on their platforms. But they didn't stop being on these platforms. At the same time, they were still gifting and delivering products to influencers and creators who were publishing this content where? On Instagram, Facebook, and other parts of social media. So did they go off social? No. They may have made the decision. These shops have really good high street footfall. Their awareness might be good, but salience might have been their problem. So they used earned media and creators as their entry point to get people to try their products. And what's really interesting, about a year after this, they started to hire for an earned social media manager. And their mandate was to drive as much earned media on social as they possibly could. Does it sound like they were off the platforms? 2 brands not posting organically. Let's go a little bit different. Gymshark, are you familiar with this sports apparel brand? Ben Francis, one of the most youngest famous billionaires in the UK. They went from baby shark to global killer. There's a few dad jokes in here today, so if you pick up, great, good, you're my kind of people. So what happened? Ben Francis had no budget, had no money, but was young, digital savvy when he set up his business. He knew that social was an opportunity to build a brand with little budget and good turnaround. He also knew that there was people of influence on these platforms that could actually get his product and awareness to more people faster through their influence. So he set up this huge influencer program where he was gifting to these athletes clothes that they were wearing, and their audience was seeing it. It was building awareness, stimulating trial, and people started to buy. And the brand took off. They started to get confident and bigger and better until they got a big evaluation, an injection of cash, and now they needed to decide, well, what next? They pivoted their strategy. Why? Because they needed to build a brand, drive critical mass in a way that they couldn't with the current setup. So they developed a bigger organic team. They disbanded and closed their influencer program with less influencers and focused on using more brand building and more paid media to compete with some of their competitors up at the next level. And finally, we have Hinge. Are you familiar with this app? No, I'm not. I'm a married man. I've never downloaded a dating app in my life. But this is an interesting story too. When you think about this, I think it's very smart. Hinge, their main aim is to win attention for people to use their app also. So why would they post content on social media to keep attention over there when they wanted people's attention over on their app? So what they used was creators and paid media in a way to take people's attention from these platforms to their platform to drive usage and drive user base. They focused then on word of mouth and other tactics, app store optimization to try and, again, convert more people. Again, another brand without organic content. So what's my point? You do not have to post 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to win on these platforms. Social offers more than just publishing content, and I'm going to talk about 2 new ways at the end. And focus on what can drive impact based on your time, resource, budget, and your strategy. Fix that problem first. Prove to the business that these platforms work, and then put out your hand. Can I have more people and budget to go off and do something else? And then there's Ryanair, something I had my hands in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk you through where I got to when it came to the strategy, and even some of the learnings of reflecting on it too. So essentially, I use what was called the 4 C's brand framework. I think it was developed by BBDOABCD123, one of those agencies, not really sure. I came to this realization that I grew up in social media. I was the first wave of social media professionals. I knew about the platforms, but about 2 years prior to starting Ryanair, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I thought I knew what strategy was, and I didn't. And I went, shit, I'm going to get exposed here if somebody actually asks a genuine question. Because most people think social media strategy is a set of content pillars, a couple of pages from the brand guidelines, squeezed together, and that's a strategy. It's not. If you go back to the definition earlier, it's nowhere near. So I had to go and look for it. Out of curiosity with the people in the room, hands up here who think they actually have a really good social media strategy documented on a page. That's not content pillars and not a few pages from a brand guidelines book. Show me your hands and be honest. Nobody. You're going to keep me in business for the next 20 years. Yes. But it's important. And again, I empathize. There's heads of social media on incredible money in this industry who are too afraid to go, hey, I don't know what a fucking strategy is. And they're just sitting in the corners. To me, they're the most overpaid community managers in the world. And again, game meets game. You've got to appreciate it. But I think we're all going to get called out at some point. So anyway, back to brand strategy. What are the 4 C's? Company, your brand. Category, your competitors. Customer, the humans who might want to buy your product or service. And culture, the social media landscape in the context of what we do. So what did we do? We went looking for insight across the 4 C's. We tried to identify a problem, a gap, or an opportunity we think that we could own that would give us an edge and a point of difference. We asked a question about how could this manifest on social media, and how do we think it could work? And this is where we got to. So let's start with the first one, brand. For some of you who are familiar with Ryanair, Michael O'Leary is the CEO. When he came to town back in the early 80s, he kicked down the door. Flights from Dublin to London or short-haul flights were really, really expensive, £400 or £500. He went over to America to follow the model Spirit Airlines. He brought it home and he put it on steroids. He went into the market. Flights were €50 each way. He democratized and disrupted the category. He was also very clever. He would say he's not a marketeer, but I think he's a very good marketeer. He did not want to invest money in advertising because every step of Ryanair is about getting your ticket low and making the operation the best it can be. And it's almost like a flex that we don't spend on marketing, but also creates a cognitive message in your mind that everything goes into getting your tickets low. So there was something in the DNA of the brand that already existed. And he used PR as a way to grab attention. Every time he goes out on his flights and trips, the second he is in front of the media, he will say the most ridiculous, polarizing, stupid things. But Jesus Christ, it got headlines everywhere. He drove so much earned media for the brand. We were like, hey, sounds a bit like social media if we do it the right way. Ding, ding, ding. Next, we have the category. Whether you admit it or not, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of big metal machines in the air that you sweat in. And it doesn't matter how nice in advertising an airline can make it look. The experience, the journey, whether you get a glass or a plastic cup with your flat Coke Zero or Heineken. No offense to any of those brands who sponsor today, lovely products. They try to make it something it's not. And they all look the same, sound the same, and behave the same when it comes to social media too. You have the picture of the captain up on the stairs giving you the beautiful salute. He's gorgeous with his perfect teeth. The cabin crew walking down the aisle looking all fabulous with their bags. If you remove the palette and the logo from all of those brands, as you scroll, could you tell the difference between any of them? Probably not. So again, looking the same, sounding the same, the sameness, there was nothing distinct or memorable from any of these brands that would stand out. So why did we do it different? Next, you have the customer. Millennials' expectations were far too high. I mentioned 1985 earlier. When Ryanair came to town, the boomers, the older generation, love Ryanair. Why? Because they can travel multiple times a year for the price of a packet of crisps and a can of Coke at the airport, top up their wrinkly tan, and have the best retirement in latter years of their life. Then you have the Gen Zers. They don't have any money, but they want experience and memories. You have a digitally frictionless company like Ryanair and low-cost flights, which meant that, hey, if they wanted to skip off college, grab a €10 flight, have a pizza in Italy, and come home the same day, they could because they were young and they wanted to do crazy shit. The biggest problem was the millennials, my generation. We're born with our big silver spoons in our mouth. We rode this economic boom that we were promised everything and our expectations were too high. And they were expecting foot massages from the pilots, hot towels, USB chargers, all for the price of a €20 flight. Something wasn't right there. There's a difficult point on expectations. But yet they complained so much. And it all carried out into the world, into culture, into social media. The Karens and the Keats always complaining about how terrible Ryanair is. But the other interesting thing was, we never told them about the operating model, so we kind of created this friction. And lastly, the corporate world broke social media, but Gen Zs and TikTok restored it. We all at one point got so sick of Instagram, this perfect curated platform of our best life and not our real life, of brands being perfect, curated and polished. And everyone was just tired that this is all fake. And then during the pandemic, TikTok came to town. And it became this comfort blanket for the world. Because as we were trying to process all the shit that was happening in the world, we wanted to try and do it in a way that was real. So they used dark humor to kind of almost fight against the negativity of what was going on in the world. And they story told this in a very lo-fi, authentic way. Okay, something here is connecting. We might get lucky here. So what did we do? We identified 3 problems. But if I'm being honest, the first 2 aren't really strategic problems to solve. They were more goals and objectives. I think problem number 3 is the one I should have focused on rather than these 2, and that was the single-minded insight that could unlock what we could achieve. Passengers' low-cost expectations were way too high, and this friction was being played out in social media. And the opportunity for us was to decrease friction about people's experiences with Ryanair by explaining you're part of this dance, and also clapping back and cancelling them a little with a bit of humor based on the DNA of the brand and how dark humor was becoming popular on social. So that's what we did. So this is a strategy on the page. We wanted to be the most talked about airline. Again, I could fix that. It isn't really realistic as a mission for the brand. But then how do we answer it with our vision? We wanted to create content so entertaining that people would not only share it on the platforms, but share it off the platforms as well. So we learned from creators and we learned from these platforms, and we reacted and behaved like a creator. And then we did two things. We looked at what was going on in the world, and we used that as our accelerator to get spikes of reach and attention by kind of making light or kind of being, irreverent on what was going on in the world, and try to insert ourselves into those moments, either directly or indirectly bringing it back to the brand. And the second part was delivering always-on content that actually educated people. Educating is a boring word, not in the way we did it, but getting them to understand the business model so they actually could change their perception about the brand. And we took this jab, jab, hook approach. You might have heard Gary Vee use that kind of language in the past. But essentially, every time we landed the right hook with reactive content, this created a window of opportunity that there was a chance another piece of our content was going to be seen by those people who may not have seen us before and actually then be entertained by it. And every time we hit a spike, it was the always-on content with the friction-changing messaging that also started to change the minds of people. So I'll give you one of those examples. Has anybody ever heard of the 25-minute turnaround? No. Oh, we have one. You're my hero. Planes in the air are cheaper than planes on the ground, which means that if we spend too long arsing about on the tarmac, it's going to cost more, which means your tickets are going to be more expensive. So when Ryanair come down and taxi into the gate, they have a couple of things. They have a stairs that pops out of the plane, and they don't use the gateways or the bridges. Why? Because they cost more money. Those bridges on the planes were originally created as emergency steps. But Ryanair went, no, can you fix that to make it work all the time? Because we can get people off and on much quicker. That's what they did. So as people come off the plane, do you remember these experiences? You're being screamed at and rushed on and shoved down the steps. You're standing down the steps all packed up. I fucking feel like I'm an animal here. I'm treated like crap. It could be raining on the tarmac and you're being shoved out. Get on the fucking plane. And everybody else is getting off. That is to turn around that plane as fast as you can to get in the air so your tickets are cheaper. But instead of pissing people off, we explained it so they were a little less pissed off. We didn't want people to love the brand, but if you knew the business model and what we were doing, we could drop that expectation and maybe get a few more people to like us. So that's what we did. We have 5 guiding principles then. The tone of voice. We acted like creators. We took that DNA of Michael O'Leary, we modernized them a little, and we shoved them into social. We then had the ability and the speed to get the platforms and formats before anybody else because the sign-off was me, nobody else in the business. We had the privilege to move fast and make decisions fast and fail fast too and learn faster. Be relevant and chaotic. We made an art direction decision to make our content look so shit that it looked like we didn't care what we were doing. Going back to that dark humor, lo-fi nature, and also that cognitive flex over, it's all about the product. But I imagine the lo-fi style was attractive because it looked like other content creators would make. We then did activations where we built with niche groups. We went after Formula One and other touch points, and the compounding building and going after those audiences started to build more reach, more engagement, more interactions. And then community, we reacted like creators in the comment sections, responding and clapping back to people. That became a new content vehicle that actually outperformed far greater than some of the original content we produced. So I'm going to show you an example of how ridiculous working in social media is. Oh, do we have play? No? Anyway, I'll talk through it. You might have seen it before. One time, I think about end of 2022, a piece of content came in from a woman who was complaining that she didn't get a window seat. But she was sitting in the exit seat with a door beside her, and there was a little hole in the door, which was a window. Now, she was doing it to grab our attention, so we clapped back. So we made a piece of content. We put a piece of red circle around that window, and we simply responded back, showing her where the window was. That red circle got 56 million impressions on X over the next couple of days. It got covered by so many news sites who probably had nothing better to do with their lives than talk about that. And it appeared on the cold opening of Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show, where Ryanair don't even fly in the US. It was just bananas. But what we started to realize with this was, we learned that we were starting to get better at this, and we were making calculated decisions to improve the comedic effect of the content. Because before that went live, we designed this perfect circle, like it looked like we went and asked a designer to do it. We also wrote a line of copy explaining the joke. Now, if we would have published that 6 months previous, we would have done that. It might have done okay. But because we were learning and moving at speed, learning, failing, tweaking, crafting, getting better at this, we started to nail how to do it. And that simple circle, no matter what language you spoke, you understood the gag straight away. And that was us getting better at nailing the execution of the strategy we set out to deliver. Now, that sounds great. He sounds like a great fella. He knows what he's talking about. He's kind of bullshitted you enough today to convince you. But I don't think that approach to social is going to work today. There are some brands who might get away with it, and Ryanair is an example that I think they need to start thinking of making changes because of what's going on in the world and how the platforms are changing.
Well, this is going viral. A Ryanair passenger tweeted at the airline complaining that she paid for a window seat and didn't get one. And here's the photo that...
We're going back to the video, so let's go back. We have to show you. Let's go. Do you want to play it again? Guys, you were doing so good today. It's at bedtime. Do you want me to act it out? Dance? I don't know. Now, let's see. We're okay. We can move on. I won't be happy later, but we'll move on. Okay, we'll move on. So look, being brave to me is changing again. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to break down a few things to kind of send you on a direction of where you could win on social with brands. To me at the moment, trend inflation is a thing, okay? But for the majority of brands, when we're the cause of causing this problem, and we're suffering from it too. All you hear from social media professionals, we need to be jumping on trends. We need to be inserting ourselves into trends. We need to be delivering trends all the time. I think we've kind of lost our way. Trends by definition are important because there's truths, insights, and things we can unlock, patterns we can spot where we can connect to culture and to people creatively to deliver ideas and campaigns. And in normal cases, we get introduced to a trend. There's early adopters who do it. It happens at a point of diffusion. It goes viral. It gets really popular. Trends in fashion is one of those examples, trends in beauty. It peaks and then it declines. But the speed of that is so small right now, especially with trends on the internet, that it becomes more difficult to get on top and do a good job of it. So the second you think it's there, it's over. Now, I think trends are still important to winning on social. But I think in how they're used, I think we need to make better decisions because it's causing a thing called cultural flattening. So the life of a trend becomes shorter, faster. And the second too many brands get into it, we kill a fucking trend. We ruin it for everybody else. But right now, so many brands are obsessed with what's the latest trend on TikTok? How can I use that sound? Remember that creator that got popular overnight? How can I do an interpretation of that piece of content? How can I deliver on the demure trend that happened last year? The start and the end of the demure trend was probably over in less than 2 weeks. And if you went out and did a vox pop and asked the Joe Soap, the regular public, could you tell me 2 or 3 brands that did something about the demure trend. And what was that message about? You will struggle to get people to remember the brand. So it starts to feel like it's more of a race to who is the fastest social media team on the internet and not somebody who can build a brand. So who really wins? The platforms win because you're filling their feeds with content to keep the attention of people so they can put ads in between. The audience wins because they might be enjoying that trend, but every time they're watching that trend, it's X 20, 30, 50 times. They scroll, they see the trend, haha, it's funny. They scroll by again, see it again, haha, that's funny. I'll give you a like. They scroll again, oh, that's really funny. I'll go into the comment section, do a few likes, and then move on. They do this again and again and again and again. How on earth do you think they're going to remember your brand after seeing that 50, 60 times, doing that 4 or 5 times a day? But yet, every now and again, you'll get 1 million impressions or 100,000 views. You'll screenshot it, you'll stick it on a presentation, and you'll go into the meeting, hey guys, we're kicking ass in social because we went viral. You're getting the views, but are you making an impression? And that's what's going on. You can cheat the system and win the system and get impressions. But are you making an impression? Are you becoming memorable? And it's getting fucking worse. Because now we're forcing ourselves into the comment sections, where every time a popular video goes viral, every fucking brand is in the comment sections putting in their couple of words. And yes, they're getting hundreds of thousands of likes. But ask the same question again. Did that person remember the brand who made that funny 3-worded comment in that piece of video about that trend? Probably not. So what are we doing? They are fun tactics. And it used to be a novelty, but now it's a pile-on. And again, who wins? The brands don't win. And what's up? This means we're like piling on, chasing attention at all costs. We're probably using time, resource, and effort in a way that is not working effectively for brands. Think of all the things James said in the previous conversation. For now and for next. Are we driving effectiveness, or are we just chasing impressions and the number and the vanity metrics on these platforms? And it gets worse again. It's leading to a thing called the engagement recession. You might be seeing the engagement on your content dropping and dropping over the last 12 months because people are brain rot and sick of all of this pile-on. They're actually detracting themselves from detracting themselves from actually engaging physically with the content and rewarding you with it. Which means that we're all a bunch of lurkers now. The lurkers are okay. They're still watching, they're still engaging, they're still entertained by your content. But those metrics that normally drive virality are dropping and dropping and dropping. Last few negative things, and then I'll be positive, I swear. We're also living on fragile ground. These platforms have changed. You have people on one side, and you have people on the other. There is very few people who are centered thinking right now, and the world is a dangerous place, and social is elevating that more. The richest man in the world recently bought a platform. He nearly broke the platform, but now it's full of septic people. The second richest man in the world is about to buy the TikTok equivalent of the US, Paramount, Disney, and all have full control of that. The third richest man in the world owns Meta. And they are going to do one thing and one thing only. Whatever an orange man in a White House says, they will appease because they are appeasing billionaires and not people. And that will change when that orange man walks out or he becomes the king of the US. Who knows? But whoever sits in those seats of power, they will pander to those people. They don't give a shit about anything else. So that is a difficult thing to navigate. And we all share these concerns. Brands, creators, and people. Dad joke number 2, and I got a laugh. Yes. Good. We're also living on rented land. Say hello to your landlords. You might have experienced this recently. TikTok nearly went down a couple of years ago because Elon Musk fired so many people from Twitter that he fired the people who were hosting and managing the servers, and they nearly went bust. TikTok nearly went dead last year in the US. People were writing their obituaries, saying goodbye, because they're about to switch off overnight. So what am I saying? It doesn't matter how much money you pump into these platforms, you do not own your audience. They do. So you need to think about how you diversify your platforms and pep yourselves into other spaces to future-proof how you can build brands in these spaces. So here's the positive stuff. I think there's a bit of a social media renaissance going. If you get this one, you're my friends. So what do I think is going on here? I think social, especially organic social, now is built on two types of discovery: prompted and unprompted discovery. So what do I mean by unprompted discovery? I think that's your current For You pages, your feeds, your spotlights on Snapchat. The algorithm decides what you see based on what you like to watch. And that is fast, consumed, curated by the algorithm. And then there's prompted discovery. Social media is becoming one of the bigger search engines on the planet. Gen Zs and other audiences are no longer relying on Google. They're going to social to search for things to do, places to see, how do I function as an adult and do boring adulting things? I need some sort of short video to make it easy for me to understand. And they're using searches that way. And I think it's becoming even more valuable because that content has now been indexed on Google and on AI. So when you create search content and optimize that content, it's going to be discovered beyond social. Now, the thing is, there are two very different types of content with two very different ways of optimization and using them. And I kind of call them fast and slow social. Fast, you could again guess straight away. Think punchy, emotional, creative, entertaining content that we go onto these platforms every day to escape from our jobs, what we're doing, our little toilet break. We're sitting there on our phone, and don't lie, you all use your phone on the toilet. This is normally designed to be consumed fast, has a short shelf life, 7 days from kind of published to its kind of saturation. It needs a certain type of hook and a certain type of way to build. It thrives on trends, repetition, and things that constantly build over time. But this content is very different. It's more thoughtful, more built upon keywords, search topics, optimizing it in a way that's helpful. It's designed to educate, provoke people, make decisions further along the journey. Now, the success of this content is a little bit different. Both content is published in the same way on the platforms, but its shelf life is much slower. That piece of content will have an early burst of reach, but over time, if optimized correctly, for certain search terms on these platforms, will incrementally get more reach over time. We have seen content that, once published, 2 months later, 90% of its views are coming from search. And you go into your insights in Instagram and TikTok now, you can see the sources of your content. You've got your For You page, your profile, and now search. TikTok has built what's called Creator Search Insights as this new search tool because they need this content. They even have a thing called a content gap, which is saying this is what people are searching for, but not enough content exists for these topics. Go make that content. It's probably going to do well. Instagram are starting to build the same and similar. Next, RIP followers, hello discovery. We talked about those two systems. It doesn't matter how many followers you have on social anymore. The fast, unprompted feeds will find content that's good enough that gets signals people are watching and liking and pushes it to everybody on the feed. You could have 5,000 followers or 5 million followers. There's accounts with 5,000 followers that are getting more reach and more views in their content than accounts with 5 million. So the discovery behavior has changed. I still have to explain to people up in C-suite, 100,000 followers doesn't mean you reach 100,000 people. It never did anyway, but even that's flipped and changed now. So that using followers as a metric of success, it's gone. Views, interactions, watch time, all those other metrics and then metrics off the platform that James talked about with the lovely tool Tracksuit is a way that you can validate the success of your campaigns. Then there's open and closed platforms. So fast and slow, which happen in the open social. And then we have closed. That engagement recession and people coming off the platform is they're spending more time in closed groups, closed communities, and closed spaces. Now, open social is not going away for a very long time. But there is a shift in behavior where we're spending less time over there and we're spending more times in spaces that are closed with people that we like, similar views, similar times, and having a better time over here. Because over here it's brain rot and shit show and wars and craziness. And over here it's a little bit safer. I can be myself a little bit more, not fear that people over here are going to cancel me or I'll be the victim on social media for the day. People are being more conscious and concerned about things. You can win in these spaces not by just making content, by creating things where they can play in those spaces. The likes of Giphy. Giphy's probably one of the most undervalued tools in social media. GIFs are used in WhatsApp. GIFs are used in DMs on Instagram. GIFs are used in the comment sections, all powered by Giphy. And what's really great about it, if you start creating content or GIFs based on the words they're searching for to express themselves, you have a chance of them using your GIFs, maybe with a little bit of subtle branding on it, to actually be used in the content they create. Or, at a very stretch, when they search for it, a short list of GIFs appear. If you optimize those GIFs and appear when you put a sticker on an Instagram story, you get a short list of about 12. Imagine if your brand was there. They mightn't pick it, but they see it. It's these touch points is where you can build brand and it compounds together. So what am I saying there? The universe of social is greater than a main social media profile. And using all these touch points is how you can create and compound and build a brand. There are also people who are using multiple profiles now in order to actually use these platforms and play to these different discovery types. They have a brand account for unprompted content. They have an account for unprompted content, where they, again, optimize everything there to make sure all of that content is working for search, slow social. All this content is working for fast, the FYPs. They're even creating, when I find a format that works, they're giving it its own channel, repeat that format time and time again to try and play the system to get as much views, memorability as they can. Last few points. I think we all need to slow down and get comfortable with the fragmentation of brands beyond the feeds and closed spaces. What do I mean by fragmentation of brands? Nobody gets the full picture anymore. You would have a 30-second spot or a radio ad where you would have a start, middle, and end. Grab attention, give context, call to action. We don't get that in social. It's so fragmented that you need to steal pockets of people's attention. But each piece of content needs to survive in isolation, but needs to aggregate together to build a brand, which is why strategy is important. Get creative with repetition with all of these formats, but every time the message is the same. And the compounding effect of that message, time after time after time, may help you build a brand. So your challenge is, how can you take one simple idea platform, blow it out in different ways, get creative with repetition, and compound and build together? But the crazy thing is, this is nothing new. Here's a fancy slide from a marketing expert to make me sound like I know what I'm talking about. Big, simple ideas, emotionally engaged. James mentioned it earlier. Creativity, emotion, tension, polarization. This, if executed time after time, which is what Ryanair did, with a purpose and a message, can build recall over time. The game is ultimately the same as what happened in marketing before. The rules have just changed about how you do it. So your role as a brand guardian now is not to have a big 100-page brand guideline book and look over every piece of content, turning the pages going, that logo is 2 times too small, we need it bigger. It needs to be 4 centimeters to the left. That red is not red enough for our brand. To actually being a curator, to letting go that if the message and distinct assets and cues are in the creative to do enough to build a brand, let it out there. And hopefully, with good thinking, it compounds and builds back a brand. So the last thing I'm going to say to you, the price you pay for doing what everybody else does is get what everybody else gets, which is mediocrity, moderate engagement, moderate reach, and no impact. Get creative, understand these platforms more, and back a good strategy time after time after time again. Last dad joke. So who are you? If you get this, we're going having shots tonight. Thank you very much.